Hey Pilgrims, Haiku Master and I were having a talk just this morning about what is the one factor that can make or break your Camino. And what we came up with was?
Foot gear.
Foot gear. So we thought that was worth an episode all by itself. We'll talk about our foot gear, our choices, some strategies for putting your foot gear choices together. And I'm just going to start out by saying, you know, people go online and they ask, what's the best brand of shoe? Well, it's not that simple, is it?
No.
Whatever is going to work for you, it's going to be different than what works for other people. And the only way you're going to know if it works or not, step one to me is go to a sporting goods store. I'm going to just name one that I like a lot, and that's REI because of their return policy. Try on every shoe they've got in your size in the realm of hiking shoes or trail runners. And find one or two brands that fit your foot like a glove. And then take those shoes out and walk with them for 6 miles a day and do that for a couple of weeks. And do that with a pack with weight in it for a couple of weeks. Because that's the only way you're going to know if that is really your brand of shoe. We've all done that. My brand of shoe is different from your brand of shoe. So that's my number one recommendation is don't just listen to what everybody else is wearing because you'll end up with Altras when maybe you're a Salomon person.
Basically, go out for a test drive.
Many test drives.
And really work out the shoes.
Yeah. And the thing is, until you've put maybe 100 miles on those shoes, you won't really be able to expose the weaknesses in them or the problems with them. That means that the pair of shoes that you test out and that you love, that's not going to be the pair you take with you. You're going to go buy that same brand and that same pair if you can, and you're going to start out with new, fresh ones.
And to be testing with socks too, the different types of socks.
You bring up a good point that socks are a big part of the equation.
Yeah, I've experimented with a couple of different types. On the Frances, I use the Injinjis, the ones, well, the different toe, because I was worried about getting toe blisters, and they did prevent it. And I actually like them too. Sometimes I wear 2 layers of a thinner wool hiking sock over them because if my feet swell a lot, I take off the outer layer and I use the Injinjis by themselves. This time I tended to use these farm to feet socks mostly because I tried hiking with them and I like them. And I did not need a liner with these, and they held up really well. The last time I wore a hole through my other wool outer socks, and these, you know, I can see that they've been worn, but there's no hole.
We discovered farm to feet socks in Hot Springs, North Carolina, and we hiked with them the rest of the way, and we're very happy with them.
But you didn't use them on this trip, did you?
I didn't because I thought that they worked better on feet that are already a little bit trail toughened. And knowing that my feet weren't quite where they needed to be, I went back to my original sock, which was the WrightSock. The WrightSock has a blister guarantee, and the WrightSocks I was using had the Cool Max liner, which by the way does not wash very well. So they're a double lined sock with a Cool Max lining and a synthetic knit outer shell, so a double layered sock. And I trained with them and they seemed to be working really well. But sand got in my shoes on some of our beach walks, and I think that my socks became abraded because they got sand in between the layers. And they didn't wash as well as I'd hoped they would wash. And as a result, my socks only lasted for about 150 miles. And I had to replace them.
I think that's a good point. A lesson learned last time was even after you find your right sock combination, because you're going to be doing, if you do the whole Camino 500 miles, start with a fresh pair of socks.
Yeah. And mine were brand new, but they just didn't put up with the kind of abuse I gave them. And once they broke down, they actually were causing my feet pain. I was getting like the feeling like I had grit in my shoe all the time. And I got blisters. No, I got like 2 blisters. But for me, that's kind of unusual. So I went to the big sporting goods store in Europe called Decathlon, and there's several along the Norte, and there's several along the Camino Frances. And I bought socks similar to the ones that I used at the end of the Frances when my socks broke at 400 miles. And in this case, it's the Decathlon brand But the way they're knit is really cool. You get compression in some areas, and if they're loose in other areas, they've got extra padding. And they're also anatomical socks. So there's a left sock and a right sock. They come in a 2-pack. These did, which means that you really could get 2 left socks if you weren't paying attention. But these saved me. My blisters started to heal after I got these new socks.
My socks also are an anatomical sock. They've got labeling on it, and if you put them on the wrong foot, you notice it right away because the sock shape is different. These are called Incrediwear, and I can't tell you what the makeup of them is. They have some proprietary claims as to what their benefits are, but I used them last time and this time, and was really pleased. I had 2 pair that I would alternate with. 1 pair actually was from the Camino last time, and 1 pair was new, and I can't tell the difference between either one of them. I didn't wear them. I didn't use a liner. I would use a Body Glide product and then put my socks on, and I had zero problems with blisters, and the Foot Glide really kept my feet nice and soft. I didn't get any cracking. I didn't have any issues, so I was really pleased with my sock wear combination.
And what did you wear on yours?
I went with the WrightSocks the whole time. They did wear out, just sort of normal wear and tear, but other than that, they were famously, they were great.
And how many pair did you have?
I took 3 pair. I rotated into the second 2 pair about 10 days in. So, I mean, I was rotating socks all the time, but after 10 days, the first pair was basically useless.
Okay.
Something else that I did differently this year, these are ankle socks, and I used compression sleeves on both legs, or calf compression sleeves, so I wouldn't get any foot swelling, and also to keep the blood flow up. And for me, that worked. I really liked it. I think it helped with recovery and my foot issues. You tried them, but they were maybe too tight, too much compression. But that was something that worked for me.
Okay, so you can see, just among the 4 of us, we have a lot of different answers, and that's just socks. Let's move on to what we did with our shoes.
Okay, and I think one thing that you brought up about trying your shoes, and check out the store policy on returning, because if you get a shoe that you don't like, if you can't return it, then you're out $100 or $150.
Right. That's
So,
another reason why I prefer using REI, because
Yeah.
their policy is really generous.
You know, you could use the shoes for 6 months and bring them back. So if you're going to be trying multiple shoes, make sure you go with a company where you can, if you don't like them, you can take them back. I did, last time I had the Ultra 4s, the Lone Peak Ultra 4s. Unfortunately, that model wasn't available anymore, so I had to get the Ultra 6s. And overall, I was pleased. They held up really well. The top parts, nothing came apart. The bottoms, I walked through. There's not any tread left. I think you guys will talk about the insoles. I think what I would do differently next time, because I have an insert, I couldn't use the super feet, so I used the original insole for about the first 300 miles, and then I went to a Dr. Scholl's. I'm gelling. I think what I would do differently, I would take out the insoles and put in Dr. Scholl's from the get-go, and then have a second pair to swap out. The other thing that I did that's a little bit different from most people, it's a weight penalty, but I've got a really good pair of hiking sandals. You know, some people hike in the Chacos, and that's all they wear, or the Keens. These are called Bedrocks. The disadvantage is they have a toe strap. But what I really like about them is they have the Vibram soles, and they have really great traction. So actually towards the end, I had almost no traction left, and on rainy days I would wear, it was part of my plan anyway to keep my shoes dry, I would wear sandals. But towards the end I wore the sandals because they had much better traction than my shoes did.
So you carried a pair of wool Injinjis too, which you could wear with them.
Yeah, and so if it got cold and wet, I had that, that warmth backup. But the other thing that I seem to be prone to shin splints, or shin splints on one leg, and shifting between shoes gave me that option. So there were about 4 days I spent the whole day in the sandals. So good option for me. You know, it's whatever works. You've got to find your own way. How about you?
I also use Ultras though. Slider and Haiku Master use the Lone Peaks. I use the Timps. One of the main differences is they don't have a rock plate, but they have 4 millimeters more of cushioning in the sole. And since I knew this trail would have a lot of pavement, and actually the Frances had a fair amount too, I wasn't worried too much about really rocky trails like you might see on the AT. I decided to go with the Timps and not have the rock plate and have the extra cushioning. Yeah, I found them really comfortable. They do wear out, but this is just normal use. I mean, they're expected to wear out around 400 miles, and runners will tell you they have to change their shoes, and the treads are pretty flattened out. They come with, this is their insole, which is pretty flexible and thin, really didn't provide a lot of cushioning, and I think like Haiku Master said, I would have probably started out with, I brought the Super Feets along, and maybe about 300 miles I changed them out. They're just more supportive and more durable, a little more cushioning in the forefoot.
While you're talking about the Super Feet, I'll just hold up my insole from my shoe. Also very, very thin, very flexible.
Yeah.
You're using the regular Super Feet for women, and I ended up choosing the hiking version.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've got a little more structure, maybe not a lot, maybe a little more cushioning too.
These ones are supposed to have a little more cushioning in the forefoot because I get kind of tender to the ball of my foot. But they're also made for women, yeah. So there's a bunch of different types depending on the needs of your foot.
And I put mine in immediately, and then I saved these for late in the game when my shoes started to break down and I started losing resiliency in my shoes. I added these back in underneath my Super Feet.
Yeah, Granger came up with that idea, and it worked. I did that too. That worked really well.
That's not going to work for everybody.
It's only after they're both a little bit squished. Otherwise, it's a little bit, changes your foot position in the shoe. So.
And the volume. It's an increased volume to worry about.
You use the Super Glide or the...
Yeah, I also use that, which, I agree, it's really helpful. I think it does help prevent blisters, and just keeps your feet in better condition. Yeah.
And I used an anti-chafe cream made by Monistat on my feet.
Everybody used something. Yeah.
You didn't.
You didn't use it? Oh, it's only...
That's because I probably have the last pair of Ultra Low Peak 4s in existence, and I kept them. I bought a whole fleet of shoes for the AT. This was a brand new pair of shoes that I had not touched. So when we started planning the Camino, I decided to keep these pristine, and I wore them for the Camino. And you can, if you were able to look at these really close, you can see that while they do have tread, the tread is pretty significantly worn. But
I don't have any on that.
Yeah, your heel tread is gone.
Yeah, but look at his forefoot. He's already.
But I'm a
super.
toe walker, and you're not. So, I did bring a pair of the insoles from a pair of Lone Peaks that had about 100 miles on them. So I wore those for the first 200 miles, and then I put these brand new insoles back in. And again, if you could see really close, you can see the indentation of every toe and the ball of my foot, where these just completely wore out. Hugely flexible.
How thin that is.
Yeah. I didn't have much foot pain, but I did have some of the telltale breakdown of the shoes. So I can see sunlight through my shoe, which means it was just a day or two from splitting along the arch. That's a classic problem that I had with every pair of shoes on the AT. But all in all, the Lone Peak 4s performed well. They didn't break down quite as much as I thought they would. I think the question we got a couple of times was, why didn't we take extra shoes? And the answer is, because they're too heavy and it's a 523-mile trail, one pair of shoes is probably going to get you to the end. And as we found, we made it okay.
Yeah, the insole replacement is worth almost 100 miles, I'd
Yeah,
say.
yeah, that made a huge difference. In fact, I commented to Honu the day that I put the new insoles in that I felt like I had a brand new pair of shoes.
Yeah, no, I,
Made that much difference in how your foot feels inside the shoe.
And an insole weighs so much less than a whole new
Oh
pair
yeah,
of shoes.
absolutely.
Obviously, if we were doing a 700-mile trek or a 1,000-mile trek, we would have to program in a replacement pair of shoes, but I would not carry replacement shoes. What about your sandals?
I did have a pair of Chacos, relatively light. They're sort of multi-purpose. You can wear them as a shower shoe if you need to. I could have walked in these, although I didn't, but I wore them almost every night.
Yes, those are your town shoes.
They were my go-to shoes just to let my feet get a breather.
no, those are different than you had on the Camino. You had the,
Princess.
or the Frances.
Yeah.
You
had
used the
plastic
Birkenstock.
I had the Birkenstock Evos,
Yeah.
but these are lighter and they're more
Really?
comfortable. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're light.
And that was kind of a last-minute impulse purchase.
Yeah.
We were looking for replacement sandals, and we found those at REI,
Yeah.
and you decided to go for it. That was a win.
Yeah. Big win.
I didn't comment, but I did carry a pair of very light, they're called Joybees, just to wear in the evening. They wouldn't have been appropriate to hike in, but they were nice to get just a change of pace for your feet.
And also,
I
if
could
you
walk
stay
around
in,
town
and if you stay in a place with a common shower,
and
you're going to want
in the
something
shower
like
and
that.
stuff. Yeah.
Well, my shoe choice was formulated on the latter half of the Appalachian Trail hike. I switched from the shoes I had been wearing to a shoe I could find, and that was the Salomons. I had selected the brand Salomon based on a visit to REI and sampling a lot of shoes, and I got a really good fit. When I was in Manchester Center, I stopped at the Mountain Goat Outfitters, and those people set me up with my favorite shoe on the entire AT. It only lasted maybe 400 miles, but it set me up as a Salomon fan, probably for life. The Salomons I wore on this one are the Sense Ride 4s. I don't know why shoe manufacturers feel the need to change something that works every single year. I really get frustrated with that, because they'll change something and then the shoe that worked for you last year won't work for you next year. It's a whole different side of the subject. So I've got my Salomon Sense Ride 4s, and I put in my Superfeet hiker version, and wore that for the first 300 miles, maybe 400 miles, and then I thought I would swap back out to the original insole. Tried that for a day. I could feel every rock on the path through my shoes because the soles were getting so thin and these weren't protecting them. Put these back in for another 50 miles, and then at that point, all the padding on my sole of my shoe was pretty much shot. So at that point, I could stack my original insole underneath my Superfeet insole, and it gave me enough resilience to get in. But I was getting a lot of foot pain towards the end, and I suspect part of that was just the shoes breaking down. Like you all, my soles, a lot of the tread is just worn clean off. And that's a problem, because then you start to lose traction, but it didn't prove to be a dangerous situation in this case.
Well, overall, so did anybody have any major foot problems? There's one or two blisters here and there. Did you have any blisters? I didn't have any. You
I
had
had
any?
a couple small ones, yeah.
Yeah, I had two tiny ones, like lentil-sized blisters. It's funny that something that small can cause that much
Yeah.
discomfort. But then I started getting like bone pain, a pain deep in my foot after probably 400 miles. And I'm not sure where that came from.
But this is really unusual, because you see a lot of pilgrims walking and their feet are, all their toes are taped up, or their feet. So, you know, for us, the four of us, to do 500 miles and have just one or two blisters, and that's the only thing that comes from doing the research on what socks and what shoes work for us.
Not just research, but getting out there,
Right.
and the feet have to hit the pavement, you have to wear a pack, and you have to see what really works for you.
And you both kind of mentioned it. When you find a shoe that you like and it really works for you, consider buying, other in that same line, because there was a big difference when he went from the 4s to the 6s. Or there's a shoe that you like and they change something. So, I mean, how many pairs of 4s did you have?
I went through 7 pair on the AT, and I think I had 4 in reserve, and I have since used all of those. This is my last pair.
I had 3 in reserve, and I ended up having 2 6s. So I had several pairs backup. You've had a couple of.
Yeah, I think I have one more pair of Timps.
But I will caution you, the EVA foam has a shelf life.
Yeah.
And these are made with different kinds of synthetic foams. Some of them will hold up in storage, and some will start to break down just because the materials they're made of change over time. So yeah, you can only go so far with the stockpiling
trade
of the
space.
shoes.
You can probably speak more to this, but people may wonder about waterproof versus not
Oh,
waterproof.
that's a good-
And I think all of our shoes are not waterproof.
Not waterproof by
Even
design.
on AT on
Yeah.
purpose, because they dry out a lot quicker. They're going to get wet.
People
Dry
with
quicker.
issues that are caused by damp feet, and that can be blisters, it could be fungus, it could be cracking. Those kind of problems are usually caused by people wearing things that don't dry out, and that means they put on a waterproof boot or a waterproof shoe, and the moisture got just permanently trapped.
Where people were wearing waterproof socks.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, I mean, they don't breathe.
Let your feet breathe, people.
So-
Take off your shoes at lunchtime, take them off as soon as you get done for the night, and let your feet air out.
Actually, that was one of the advantages of sandals and hiking. Just some days it felt good to just kind of let my feet breathe
Yeah.
and hike in sandals, or walk the morning in shoes and the afternoon in sandals.
And there's a lot of people out there that still believe in wearing boots. And that's fine, that's your personal choice. But I'll tell you what, that weight on your legs, if you're not wearing boots every day at work in your normal life, that kind of weight on your legs is going to be hard on your knees, your ankles, your hips, your spine. If you're not used to that weight, it's an issue. The reason why boots are worn in the hiking world is because some people have to carry mountaineering gear. So you're talking about a pack that weighs maybe 3 times as much as the pack you're going to carry on the Camino. When you have that kind of weight, you actually need a boot that will keep your foot in shape, because your foot splays out under pressure. And so really, to me, the only reason to wear a hiking boot is to carry heavy gear. Yeah, for rescue, people who are doing guide work, people who are doing like Sherpa kind of work. Although it occurs to me most Sherpas wear sandals,
Flip flops.
flip-flops.
But you'll see a big difference between hiking shoes and trail running shoes.
Right.
You get the heavier, bulkier.
Yeah, and I think hiking shoes probably have a little bit longer life than trail runners, but trail runners are a fraction of the weight.
Yeah, so again, you're going to have to get out and try them on, read up, and see what works for you.
Some people lean towards wearing hiking boots because they're higher up your ankle, and they believe that that's going to give them ankle support. Best support for your ankles is just to walk in regular shoes and build up your ankle strength and build up so that you can sustain a sprain or a roll of your ankle without it being a permanent problem on the Camino. So I would not advise people to choose boots unless you're wearing boots every day when you go to work.
Yeah, or you have a special, need for an ankle support for some previous problem. Yeah.
But shoes are really a personal choice, and the best thing you can do to get ready for any hike, Camino or not, is to just walk, because that gets your feet ready for what you're going to do. And walk with a pack. You get your feet ready, you get your joints ready, and you know whether or not the shoe sock combination you have is going to suit you for the trail.
And it's a commitment of time, but
Yeah.
ultimately that can save your Camino.
Separate thing, who used walking sticks? Yeah.
Trekking poles, even for all you real young people out there.
Yeah.
that is save a lot of, well, falls, but also just unload weight from your lower body.
My arms are
And
tight and
exercise.
strong. My upper arms
And,
look good right now.
It's nice to use all four of your limbs instead of just your legs for 500 miles.
But if you've got any questions about any of that, you can just write in, text,
Yeah, put them in the comments.
and
we'll
be glad to answer.
Yeah, we'll be watching the comments on this one. Because it's it's an issue. It ends up being a controversial issue for some folks. Sorry, boot people.
Could be the single biggest choice
Yeah.
that determines whether or not you make it through whatever hike you're planning.
Thanks for walking along in our shoes.
Bye.
Camino.
Camino.